2 weeks ago, I went to a party with a couple of friends. It was the kind of night you don't expect much from, but end up remembering in vivid detail for the rest of your life. The bar was nothing special. A dive on the corner of 5th and Madison, where the floor stuck to your shoes, and the bartender looked like he'd seen every kind of sin imaginable. A local band was playing covers, mostly classic rock and a little bit of 80s cheese. It was corny, sure, but me and the rest of the girls had a blast. A few drinks in, I even started enjoying the predictable pickup lines from guys who probably practiced them in the mirror before leaving the house. By the time 3 o'clock rolled around, my head was pleasantly fuzzy, my legs tired from dancing. It was time to go home. I pulled up my Uber app, thumbed in my address. 15 minutes from the city centre, shouldn't take long. The driver who accepted was 5 minutes away. Name, David. Car, a black Escalade. I remember thinking it was a bit much for an Uber ride, but I wasn't about to complain. When he pulled up, the SUV was massive, sleek, and too clean. The kind of car that belonged to a banker, not a rideshare driver. I climbed in the back and felt the leather stick to my thighs. "Hey," I mumbled, already composing a text to my friends to let them know I was on my way. David pulled away from the curb, his movement slow and deliberate. The ride was smooth, the city lights blurring past in streaks of neon. That's when he spoke. "Mind if I put on some music?" His voice was low, almost pleasant. I barely looked up from my phone. "Sure," I said. Then came the noise. It wasn't music, it wasn't even white noise, not really. It was static, but there were shapes in it. Patterns. It scratched at the base of my skull, wormed into my ears. My fingers went slack. My phone dropped onto the seat next to me. I tried to speak, to tell him to turn it down, but my tongue wouldn't move. My body wouldn't move. The static shifted, pulsed. For a moment, I thought I heard a voice in it. Or maybe 100 voices whispering just beneath the surface. I felt my head tilt slightly to the right, completely out of my control. In the rearview mirror, David's face was changing, melting. The features stretched, twisted into something inhuman. His mouth was too wide. His eyes were black pools of ink. And still, that noise kept playing, drilling into me. My thoughts unraveled, slipping away like pages ripped from a book. I don't remember getting out of the car. One moment, I was trapped in that rolling nightmare, and the next, I was standing in front of my house, my keys in my hand. The Escalade was gone, and the static was just a lingering hum in the back of my brain. I stumbled inside, locked the door behind me, and sat on the floor of my entryway for what felt like hours. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, though I was, but because I felt like I wasn't fully here, like something had crawled inside my head and was still settling in, finding its way through the folds of my brain. I floated above my own body, watching it twitch, watching it breathe. My mind stretched into impossible spaces. I saw things I couldn't describe, things that existed beyond the thin veil of reality. When the sun finally rose, the feeling faded. I was me again. Almost. My body felt lighter, like some invisible weight had been lifted. My thoughts were sharper, my nerves calmer. It wasn't unpleasant. But when I thought back to that ride, to that static, I felt a coldness seep into my bones. I checked the Uber app later that morning. No sign of David. No record of my ride. It was like he'd never existed. Maybe he didn't. Or maybe, just maybe, he existed somewhere else. Somewhere I had brushed against just for a moment. Somewhere that had left its mark on me, whether I wanted it to or not.